Walt, you have another letter.
Oh, wow, another birthday party invite.
Oh, Mr. Popular, you are past month.
Guess I am just a likable guy.
So, how many events is that for the next couple of weeks?
Well, I have 12 birthday parties, 11 fancy dinners, 10 pretty weddings, 9 bar mitzvahs, 8 block parties, 7 housewarming parties, 6 graduations, 5 baby showers, 4 fundraisers, 3 funerals, 2 pool parties, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah, but all of these letters say, please send us the bill for the catering. Thank you for supplying such wonderful food.
Oh, they don't need to pay. They just need to be my friends for eternity.
Oh my god. Expecting such a...
The demonic...
that was a really demonic sound that just came out of your body just then.
I don't know where that came from.
Oh my God.
Summoned it forth from the belly somewhere.
Just supplying food, but also taking their souls.
Taking the souls of the damned. Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast by the Greensboro Commander community. It's the GCP by the GCC, helping you to have better games of Commander. I'm your host, Walt.
And hello, Commander players. It's your other host, James. Please invite me to your block parties.
Your block parties. There were several different kinds of parties in that little stretch. I'm a popular guy.
Yeah, funerals is not one to be going to. That's happy there.
No, I did see there's a little brackets up to the word funerals that says sadly. I didn't quite have the breath, or I otherwise would have snuck that in there somewhere.
Oh lordy! Well, speaking of invitations to go to events,
Sure.
We get invited aboard a spaceship every now and then.
We do
to talk about some stuff.
I think we have an incoming transmission.
Ooh.
From the deep depths of the galaxy, from the Space Commanders. It's time to get commanded.
The most popular Commander cards are not always the most entertaining to use. Finding cards that are synergistic and interesting may require that you think outside the box.
Oh, this feels like a you episode.
This is definitely up my alley. Definitely.
You are definitely a person that if someone says, what does that card do? I've never heard of it when you play it.
That's my win. I think I said that directly on the podcast before. Yeah. That's like my goal as a deck builder is to do that. Yeah.
Well, like Blacksmith Skill was a card that I'd never heard of before. You played it and I was like, this is just as good as Ephemerate or Protection Spell. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah. No, it's something I feel very strongly about. It's interesting. So they want us to talk about cards that are less played, is how I'm sort of interpreting what they said. So I guess we should sort of start with why are cards popular in the first place?
Yeah, I guess that's a good place to start, because to find out what cards aren't popular, you need to know which are. And it's actually really easy, in my opinion, to identify them, because they're the cards that you see everywhere. And in every deck, a lot of people refer to them as like auto includes is one of those phrases that you hear tossed
Staples
around.
Is another one that you'll hear a lot. It's interesting. I definitely, there's some that I think are auto includes, but there's some that I think a lot of us are playing almost just out of habit. I agree. So one place I think that a lot of us are getting these cards in the first place is precons, right?
For sure.
So many people, when they first play Commander, they start with a precon, right? They buy one, that they upgrade it, but like a lot of the cards that they're using as their basis for that deck, and then probably when they start building in other decks, they're using that as a point of reference, is the cards that are printed in these precons. And look, a bunch of them appear like a lot in precons, right?
Well, like, sometimes you'll see a YouTube review of a precon and they won't even talk about 10 to 15 cards in the deck because they're included in every single precon.
Yeah,
some of them like are include because they're colorless. Like some of them are artifacts.
Yes.
They're included in literally every single one.
I mean, Arcane Signet, right? Yeah. Was very contentious when it was first printed as part of the Brawl decks because it was such an auto include basically.
In any commander deck.
Yeah, in any commander deck, it's basically borderline as playable as Sol Ring, really, in Commander.
In my humble opinion, Arcane Signet is actually more playable than Sol Ring.
Whoa.
On the basis of fast mana is incredible,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
But Sol Ring taps for colorless. Arcane Signet is a 2 mana, which we've spoken about before as your absolute sweet spot for mana
Yeah,
acceleration.
especially if it's producing 1 mana, yeah.
Exactly. And it produces a mana of any of your commander's colors.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's fixing way better than Sol Ring, obviously.
It is. And
yeah.
like in 3 colors or more, sometimes people take out Sol Ring to put in another color fixing piece.
I mean, that's interesting. I do think, like, that is how good Arcane Signet is, that I
Yeah.
think... Yeah, I mean, look, I think most of my decks are 2 colors or less, so I probably play more Sol Ring and less Arcane Signet.
That's fair.
But yeah, it's a really, really good, great card. Some other cards that you'll see a bunch in these precons are also very popular across our format. Solemn Simulacrum.
Sad Robot.
Sad Robot. So sad. We've watched a bunch of game nights, as you can tell. That's the 4 mana golem that ETBs. You get a basic onto the battlefield tapped, and when it dies, you draw a card. So
See, it's an incredibly popular card, right? But
Yeah.
in your Golems deck, it's actually quite interesting.
it's actually surprisingly good in the golems deck because you want to sack your artifacts. Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's also like there are definitely places where Solemn is really, really strong. Like my Arami deck, Solemn is fantastic.
Making multiple copies
Yeah.
on an ETB and a death trigger is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it is colorless. It replaces itself
Yeah.
and ramps you when it dies.
Yeah, it's a strong card. It's
good.
popular for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another card that we used to play a lot of, but have since kind of turned away from, Burnished Heart. Do you remember the elk, the artifact elk?
So it's like a 3 mana, it's 3 colorless again.
Yeah.
So it's an elk, I think it's a 2/2.
Yeah.
But then you can pay 3 and sack it, and you get 2 basics onto the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, it's kind of like Myriad Landscape on a stick.
Yeah, I think the reason I moved away from it is like the raw mana you're investing is 6, really.
Yeah, to get 2.
Yeah.
So like it's when you think about like getting 2 lands onto the battlefield, we've got, explosive veggies.
Yeah.
Which is 4 mana 2 to the battlefield.
Yeah, and that's like the typical rate. Like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of cards that are like that. There's Sky Shroud Claims. He's a lot of play for that
Thunderherd
reason.
Migration, I think, is another one. Which
Yeah,
is,
there's a bunch of them because that's just kind of the rate. So yeah, paying 6 can feel kind of bad. Another card you'll see a lot in these decks that I do think is very playable is Beast Within.
that's super playable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one that we talked about when we talked about removal in the deck building episode.
Because it hits anything.
It hits anything. Yeah, exactly right. And you give the player who you blow the thing up from. I don't know.
The permanent that is being blown up, the owner creates a 3/3
That's
beast.
Yes, that is correct and good. Thank you.
Worded better than your
Yes.
mouthful of words.
I think I had the right words, but the wrong order.
It's hot in this room.
It is hot in this room. Beast Within hits anything. So it's a 3 mana instant, so like it's not, the best rate in terms of what we're paying, but we are getting the ability to blow up Gaia's Cradle or Omniscience or anything. So, it's a very good card. But yes, printed a bunch in the precons. Subsequently, we see it a lot in Commander, just in general.
Handy. Another piece of removal in a different color that is a staple in its color, which we spoke about in our deck building episodes. Chaos Warp.
Yeah, card's amazing.
Yeah, the red card to remove anything that's not a creature, really, or artifact.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can use a creature or an artifact if you wanted to as well, which is why it's so good. But yes, the big one is that if you're in a color that can't deal with enchantments, suddenly you've got something that can.
And that's why Chaos Warp is such a quote popular card.
Yeah.
Is because it is run all the time in red decks because it's the card to run if you are in that situation. So sometimes cards are popular because you have to run them.
Yeah, totally.
Like I guess Feed the Swarm in mono black decks is also one of these popular cards because it's the only option.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah, another sort of colorless one that sees a lot of play, Swiftfoot Boots.
Oh, yeah.
This just, I think in basically any deck where you want to keep your commander safe. And
which is all of them,
basically
usually.
all of them. And also definitely any deck where you care about your commander having haste, then it's just like a no-brainer. Like I had a Krenko Mob Boss deck, basically taps to make a bunch of goblins. It's an irrelevantly large number. And having the ability to give Krenko hexproof and haste the turn that he came down, that was like just gravy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like how we're using gravy more and more and more in these episodes. We're using gravy a lot to describe cards.
I go through phases with words. Like, I kind of like enamored with particular words, and I think gravy is my current gravy.
Gravy's the gravy. We'll use it for like a couple more episodes, then we'll switch to the sauce.
Sauce time.
Well, speaking of other cards that are just the sauce,
yes,
there are cards that are really popular just because they are the gravy or the sauce. They're just really good and really strong.
Yeah, totally.
So, like, there is, like, we've talked about, like, some removal effects and some ramp effects. So, like, an incredible, really efficient piece of removal and a board wipe, Cyclonic Rift.
Oh, yeah.
It is one-sided. It bounces everything to your opponent's hands if you overload it.
Instant speed.
It's instant speed. You can also use it as just an unsummon, but for 1 extra mana if you're in a pinch.
Yeah.
So it's a versatile card.
Yeah.
It's incredibly one-sided, and if someone's holding up 7 mana for that overload cost, you know that they're about to win on your end step because they bounce everything to your hands.
They keep everything,
and then they just swing out, no blocks.
Yeah.
It's incredibly good. It is also really expensive. But it's expensive because it's incredibly good and everyone wants to run it in a blue deck.
Well, and you can't replace the effect, I think, is the thing, right? Like, there's cards out there that are really, really strong. And, like, I'm not saying you have to run Cyclonic Rift, but, like, if you're building the most powerful deck you possibly can, or the best deck you possibly can, you're almost certainly going to include Cyclonic Rift because it's just so good.
Or even if you're just trying to up the power level of your deck a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like an easy... If you've got the money to splash, it will upgrade that power.
Totally it will. In a similar vein, cards like Rhystic Study, you know, like...
2 blue cards we've mentioned at the top of this list of just great cards.
They're just really good. I mean, yeah, Rhystic Study, I don't think there's almost any card that will draw as many cards as it. Like, you have Mystic Remora at a slightly lower cost. You've got the new white one.
Esper Sentinel.
Esper Sentinel. But, like, both of those are only non-creature spells. Like, nothing will slow your opponents down as consistently as Rhystic Study. Or, if they're not willing to... Yeah, if they're not willing to pay the cost, then it's just like, yeah, cool, I get 6 cards
and
from
Esper
this turn
Sentinel
cycle.
only triggers once a turn.
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
So it's like, a lot of people call it the White Rhystic Study.
I've heard Rhystic Buddy as well, which is kind of funny.
Oh, that's a cute nickname.
Yeah, I like that one.
Rhystic Buddy. But it's Rhystic Buddy, but it's Rhystic Study's little brother. And he's not nearly as strong as Rhystic Study.
No, definitely not. In terms of drawing cards like Sylvan Library, just so good, you know, for the cost of... Even if you don't pay the life to keep the cards you draw. So basically in your draw step with Sylvan Library, you draw 2 extra cards, and then you can pay 4 life to keep either of those cards. So you can pay 8 life in total, and it means that in your draw step, it's a 2 mana enchantment, you just draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
Quite a hefty price to pay, but the great thing you can do with it is for no life at all, you can just draw 3 cards and then just put 2 of them back. So you just get the best card of your top 3 every turn. Obviously, much, much stronger when you have like a lot of fetch lands in your deck.
To shuffle those ones
away. Yeah, because
away.
then you can shuffle the ones you don't want away.
Get 3 more cards the next turn.
Yeah, there's no real other card that does something like that. So of course it's really expensive. Of course it's really popular. It's just so good.
Yeah, again, if you're running a green deck, if you've got green in your commander's color identity, this card will make your deck a little objectively better. It's one of the best pieces of card selection around.
Totally.
And again, like another really great hyper efficient card in the ramp area.
Yeah.
Carpet of Flowers.
Yeah, 100%. Same story, basically. Like the amount you're paying, like 1 mana, versus the amount of mana you're likely to get, which is probably going to be minimum 2, sometimes like 3 or 4 a turn. You can't beat that. There's no card like it.
So Carpet of Flowers, for those that don't know, is a 1 mana green enchantment that produces X amount of mana of any one color in one of your main phases. You can choose. It's like it's worded really weirdly.
It is.
But it's equal to the number of islands a target opponent controls.
Yes.
So you might be like, oh, but what if I'm not playing up against a deck that's blue? The first 2 cards Walt and I mentioned were Cyclonic Rift and Rhystic Study. Like, the indication is blue is an incredibly popular color in our format.
Yeah, you'll see it at least one player will be playing it per turn.
Yeah.
And look, like we said, often it's going to be 3 or 4 mana. The cool thing you can do with Carpet of Flowers that's like really underrated, I think. Well, not underrated. It's a great card. Everyone knows it. But you can play it on your first main phase and then just move to your second main phase and trigger it. Yep. So the turn it comes down, it can often produce more mana than you spent to cast it. This is our definition of fast mana that we talked about in our previous episode.
It's actually pretty much all of these cards that we mentioned are also CDH staples, not just Commander staples. So that says something about their power level.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think CDH decks are like, you know, anywhere between 50 and 80% of a deck when you like load it up will be very similar across multiple CDH decks because like they're the best cards in the format. And so I think that's sort of an indication to you like there's a lot more room for less played cards at lower power levels because the higher you go, the more you're trying to find the absolute best version of an effect. And they're typically going to be the really popular ones you see all the time because everybody knows about them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's going to make cards really popular and probably contributes to a lot of cards seeing a lot of play across multiple decks is EDH Rec.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we love it, obviously.
It's
like
great resource. The resource for Commander players.
Yeah, totally. But the main thing that it does, I think, is most people, when they're building a Commander deck, will load up the Commander's page and then flick through the top cards, right? So it's just immediately pointing them to, these are the cards everyone is playing in this deck. And yeah, because we're all drawing on the same pool of cards, it's going to be a, 10, 15 cards that you'll see a lot of the time.
Okay, sidebar for a hot second.
Sure.
This might be a bit of a contentious debate we're about to have, and it could be a debate or we could just agree completely. Do you think EDH Rec is making Commander more boring?
Oh.
If any of the EDH Rec people are listening, sorry. I don't mean to say you're an incredible website, but like you just outlined, these cards are always going to be at the top. Obviously, you can filter the cards on EDH Rec. That's one of my favorite features. You can go I want to actually see the least played. Yeah. And even on Scryfall, when you go by EDH rank, you can reverse it lowest to highest.
Totally,
so you can see the weirder cards.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's automatically, if you're not really familiar with the website, and especially a new player, which, let's be real, a new player is going to have their expectations and their habits of what cards they include set by this.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's such a good resource. I've heard this sentence said a few times online, which is that EDH Rec stops you from missing really obvious includes, right? Which I think is an overall benefit to the format. Like, we shouldn't all be solitarily trying to solve problems that other people might have solved for us already.
Yeah.
I will say that I definitely think over-relying on EDH Rec does make decks boring. I think if you literally just grab, the most played cards on EDH Rec for every deck you ever build, I think it's gonna produce pretty boring, by the books versions of each deck that you're building.
Yeah.
And I do think that kind of overall contributes to a lesser format of Commander. I think, if everyone universally is just buying the top cards on EDH Rec and those are what's going in their decks, I think that's a format I'd be less interested in than one where people are not doing that.
Thankfully, our format is so diverse, though, that even if this phenomenon is happening, we've got players that put themselves on budget restrictions like yourself, or players that have Vorthos reasons to run cards or something like that. So thankfully, we got a really diverse format anyway. I think the one thing that I kind of take from this whole discussion of EDH Rec and people being pointed in the direction of specific cards that's a positive is the fact that just by having popular cards that exist in our format actually makes for a bit of efficient gameplay.
Yeah.
Just purely by me being like, I'm going to swords this creature. Don't have to read out what the card does. Everyone knows what the mana cost is. Everyone knows what its effect is.
Yeah.
And it's very efficient.
That's true. There's definitely something to be gained for the fact that, the fewer overall cards we see, the more accessible it is for new players as well. Yeah. I think, which is what you're sort of alluding to, is once you learn what swords does,
you'll never need to know what swords does again, because now you've learned it. Swords doesn't change when Walt casts it compared to when I cast it.
No.
The first time you see it, you'll remember it, and then you'll know it for the rest of time.
I mean, even if it takes you three goes at reading it, eventually someone says Swords to Plashes, and you're like, oh, cool, what are you targeting? You make the leap there. Yeah, that's true, actually. I'm
trying to get positives out of popular. I don't want to be too negative Nancy on popular cards, because I'm going to be real. When I was thinking about this command, I looked through my text and I was like, shit, I might be a boring player. But we'll talk about it a little bit later. Yeah. But I do have some interesting plays. But
look, I think the thing I want to bring out of this, so I do want to talk about, are the popular cards boring? I want to talk about that some more, but I really want to emphasize that our focus with this command is to actually, we're not going to just rail against popular cards. We're going to say that there's a lot you can gain from moving away from popular cards and moving towards less played cards.
For sure. And one of them is fun. It's a big one.
Absolutely. Fun's going to be a huge one. But yeah, we'll stick on boring cards a little bit longer. Okay. Popular cards being boring. Look, I do think that when you're building a deck and you keep on putting the same cards in the same decks, it can start to make you feel like you're a little bit uncreative as a deck builder. You start to go
I've run this card in 3 other decks.
Yeah, I keep seeing the same card, and it's
Yeah.
like, we've talked before about how we love the fact that Commander, because it's a singleton format, because we typically don't play a lot of tutors, we love the variance across different games where you get to
100%.
see different interactions, different cards each time. And yeah, if you're playing if you build a bunch of green decks, and every single one of those decks has Reclamation Sage in it, and I've learned this by myself.
How many
hard way.
Reclamation Sages have you bought in your life, Walt?
I think at one point I had 3 of them.
In 3 decks?
In 3 decks,
There you
though.
go,
But
yeah.
it is remarkable how much of an effect that will have where you're like, oh, right. Like when I play my Reese Flicker deck...
Because it's got ETB effects.
Yeah, I want to be abusing ETB effects. I'm looking for Reclamation Saves to deal with problems. And when I'm playing my Merrin Reanimator deck...
Which plays on ETBs in a different way of flickering because you put them into your graveyard and then recur them.
But you still just want ETBs, right? And
Yeah,
so
that's
I
true.
sort of found myself going round and round in circles going like, wow, am I just building the same decks over and over again? Like, can I do anything interesting or new ever? And I think I've talked before about how my Mirren deck ended up transforming for that reason into sort of a Gerard Golgari Lich Lord Secret Commander thing. But
also, I love
yeah.
that. I love the fact that you didn't just go, okay, I'm going to put Gerard in the command zone and remake this deck. You made it a secret commander, but also, if he dies, Merrin gets him back.
Yeah.
So it's like, it can... Because sometimes secret commander decks... If you don't know what secret commander decks are, it's basically where, in the 99, you run a creature. Might not be legendary, but the creature that the deck is actually based around. But in your instance, it's kind of an interesting one, because you could have run it as a commander. It's the same
could've.
colors.
Yeah.
It's the same point, but... You've got a value engine in your command zone instead of the commander.
Yeah, I look, to be honest, if I wanted it to be... Certainly if I ever wanted to move lower powered, I think I'd have Gerard in the command zone instead. But I kind of like this sort of, I'm moving towards the goal of finding Gerard,
Yeah.
Like there's a few tutors in the decks, like there's a few ways to find him, but typically I just mill myself a bunch.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get that moment where your eyes light up when Gerard hits the bin and you're kind of like, oh...
Or when he draws it and you see it
Yes.
across the table and you're like, oh, damn it, he got it.
It's game over now. Yeah.
I think that is something so unique about your play style as well. I think that, you identified the fact that you have this, the Reclamation Sage would have been in both those decks, and it was probably in another one of your decks as well. It was probably in I'm trying to think of another green deck that
Might have been in
had.
Rada at one point.
Yeah, just because it's a great removal spell, you might have had some green creature recursion in the deck, or, it's a great removal spell as it is, but, you looked at that and went, nah, I'm going to switch up the point of this deck, because that means I have to run more interesting removal. Or it means I can run synergistic removal with this strategy, because it isn't just ETBs now, it's power matters.
Yeah.
Because of Gerard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, I think that's the key takeaway here is it was fun to remake that deck and make it do something different. If I can make another argument against these popular cards, we sort of alluded to it already in the previous section. They're expensive. So many of our format's best cards are a lot of them are $5, $6. Some of them are $10, $20, $50, $100 in some cases. Smothering Tithe got a reprint recently. I think that card's still $30.
It breathed on its price. It didn't move it much.
No. Dockside had a similar thing, got reprinted.
Yeah.
That card's still $40.
Well, this is the thing. When I was I'm now the type of player that, is boring and does grab these cards. I saw a Dockside. Someone was selling a Dockside Extortionist for I think it was 60 Aussie.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm getting it. Hands. I think this was just before the reprint.
Gotcha.
So it was already reaching $80, $90.
It was very in short supply. So the price was kind of, it was that sort of thing where you thought the price might not be actually indicative of what it was worth. Because it's yes, Card Kingdom says $60, but it's never in stock.
Yeah.
So it's is it actually 80 or 90? Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw it for 60 and I was like, I'm buying it. I don't have a deck for it yet, but I'm buying it. And I think I bought it because I fell into this thought of it's an absolute staple. It's a popular card. Everyone chases it. I need it.
Yeah.
And maybe that was a mistake, but it did find a home in my Brutaclad deck.
I mean, I am glad it found a home in that deck. It was very, very strong a couple of times I saw it in there.
Yeah, make 15 treasures and then make all those treasures 10 tens. That's pretty good.
Yep. No, busted. Can you think of any other, what are the other staples that are, expensive?
Well, we talked about, all the different categories of, the Smothering Tithe is ramp. We've talked about a board wipe, Psych Rift, which is expensive.
Yep.
Tutors, Vampiric Tutor, DT, all of these are, pricey like all the
DT's
efficient...
got to be like $40 now. Or something,
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
exactly. Like all the really efficient tutors. Which, let's be fair, if you're playing tutors, you want them to be efficient.
Yeah, you don't want to play Diabolic Tutor.
Or Razaketh's Right, which is 5 mana.
Yeah,
like
no, you
that,
don't really want that probably.
That's cheap, but you're not going to play a 5 mana tutor. I'm sorry.
No.
Like, they're money.
Yeah.
Like, so if you want to play efficient shooters, you just have to spend it.
Yeah.
It's kind of horrible.
Totally. I mean, even cards like Lightning Greaves and Birds of Paradise, like they're not like $10, $20, $30, but they're like $5. So
Yeah,
if
true.
you're putting one of those in every single deck you're building, like, you know, me and you have a million decks, obviously. I've got like 15 now, something crazy. But
I'm building my 16th tonight.
yeah, well, there you go. But, you know, if you put that $5 Lightning Greaves in all 16 of those decks, that's $80. And that's
Oh my
that's
lord, I
one
didn't
card
think about that.
of the 100 in each of those decks. Like that's going to stack up.
Which,
you
to
know?
be fair, like Lightning Greaves, like Swiftfoot Boots, Lightning Greaves is a card that any commander deck can run.
Yeah.
Because it protects your commander.
And it's colorless,
So, yeah, it's one of those cards again. There's a bunch of these. Like even some of the like hyper efficient ramp spells sit at like $5. Like,
Yeah, I mean, even 3 visits is like $6 or $7.
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's just
yeah.
one of those cards where like if you've got forests that are typed and you want to get them.
That's the card you got to pick. Yeah, exactly. Or it's the most efficient version of the effect.
Yeah.
So look, like avoiding some of these really popular cards is going to be great for your wallet. It will save you money in the long run.
This message approved to you by the Budget Book.
Exactly right. But look, also I think that the key thing here, and you sort of spoke about this already with Dockside, if we're always looking for these expensive cards, we've kind of turned deck building into this extremely linear path where the destination is always the most efficient version of an effect.
Yeah, well, like, I'm just thinking, like, literally every single deck that I have in Commander that's white runs both Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile.
Yeah.
Because they are the 2 spells that are the most efficient removal spells in white.
Yeah.
So I have how many white decks do I have? Not many. I think I've got 2-3 white decks.
Yeah.
And all of them have both Path and Swords.
Yeah. So like, but you can't go anywhere from there, is what I'm saying. If your goal is the most efficient version of that effect, you know.
I can't get any better than Swords and Path.
No, and so...
Solitude, maybe.
Yeah, arguably. But, you know, you've turned, like, the deck building has become this linear path where it's like, once you get to Path and Swords, is that the end? Is the deck finished? Are you done? Like, you know what I mean? Whereas
there's no creativity left to
yeah,
it.
there's nowhere left to go, and so you end up sort of stuck in this one place. Whereas, yeah, I'm sort of the kind of central thesis statement of, you know, what the command was is that the most popular cards are not always the most entertaining to use.
Entertaining. I didn't actually catch it when the Space Commander said that word.
Yeah, but it's like that's a really important part of Commander, right? We love entertaining games. We love entertaining decks.
And like I've never told a story about someone saying I swords this and everyone going, "Oh!"
Yeah.
Like, you know, it happens, but it's not very common. But if someone uses a really niche effect and does like 3 things or uses a card that you have to go, "What's that do?"
Yeah.
Like that's a story. That's stories that I remember in Commander.
Yeah, because they exist within the context of we know all of the really strong cards. If you've been playing Commander for a while, you know about Tithe, you know about Swords, you know about Path, you know about Heuristic Study, but you're going to remember the ones that go against the grain. And I think that's where the fun's going to be.
Entertaining. I like that. All right. Should we take a little bit of a bit of a break, but make this break budget?
I mean, it's the perfect episode for it.
Take a break. Take some budget.
Take a thrifty interlude.
Thrifty interlude time.
Sure. Well, yeah, we've got lots to cover again. We're gonna be talking about the cards that are
entertaining.
And why we think you should play them. But yeah, before that, let's hear about a little budget card. Do you want to read the card that I'm going to be doing this week, James?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one because it's a 1-mana counterspell. I'm all about the efficiency, and it's also it's a budget 1-mana counterspell. So like,
totally.
Yeah, okay, all right. The card for the Thrifty Interlude this week is Turnaside. For a single blue mana, you'll get an instant that says counter target spell that targets a permanent you control.
Ever wish people would just stop? Just stop it right now? Wish you could tell someone, hey, how about don't? What if you didn't do that? Ever wish people would consider not doing things? Like maybe now is the time to stop? Do you ever lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, contemplating the steady unraveling of plans that is your life, considering the possibility that it could all be for naught, but then remembering that you have a budget, 1 mana counterspell? Stop it all at the flick of a card! It hasn't been this much fun to say no since your cousin asked you if there were any games on the iPad. No, Stephen, there isn't. Also, your parents are trapped in a loveless marriage by you! Get budgeted.
I've said this once, I'll say it multiple times. I love the infomercial style Thrifty Thursdays.
I think the last one was that way as well.
I love it. I feel like buying a Turnicide now. Like, but hey, don't you have a cousin called Stephen?
I do have a cousin called Stephen. He's not in a loveless marriage, but I borrowed his name for the purposes of the skit. Oh, goodness. Anyway, look, you can read some of these posts as I write them on Discord.
Yeah.
They're released every week on there on a Thursday. They're called Thrifty Thursdays on there, not Thrifty Interlude. And you can see me make some of them into zany little monologues on TikTok at G_Commander Community. So chuck us a follow on there if you want to see those as well.
Yeah, and big shout out to our Discord, because Walt and I are hanging out in that Discord server a lot now. We have our own channel in that Discord server.
We do. There was some really good discussion, especially around the deck building episodes that have come out recently. So yeah,
a lot of hot opinions.
Yeah, and you sort of like, it keeps the dialogue going that we've generated like as part of the podcast, and then like me and James often hop back in and keep talking about it. So, you know, if there's a part of the podcast you really like that really grabs you and you want to know more, start talking in that channel, and like one of me or James will 100% hop in and start talking to you about it, because we love the format. We love talking to the people who listen to the podcast. So please, if you have any questions at all, chuck them in that channel. We'd love to answer them.
We're really, really curious on your opinions. And at some point in the future, Spell Table online games, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And also, sort of in the future, potentially another little Q&A. I don't want to, not really soon, but someday soon. Might be good to answer some more questions. So if we don't answer right now, we might just be like, hey, great question. We're going to
take that and make an episode out of it.
Yeah, basically.
I'm really keen to see more of you guys in the Discord. So it's all in the show notes. Jump on, find us.
Hop on. We'd love to see you.
All right, should we start talking about these exciting cards to play in our decks?
Let's start to investigate some of the things we can find when we think outside the box, like the Space Commanders told us to. So I think there's two main things that I've found. Obviously, I love budget cards. I love weird cards. So I have done a lot of this, like, thinking about interesting ways of getting effects. I know you have a lot of pet cards that you've found that you really love in particular decks. So, there's two main things that I think we get when we start to look at those cards. The first one is I reckon we get more synergy.
Weird, 100%. Like, again, there are incredible hyper efficient spells that are really popular because they're hyper efficient in removal, in card draw, in ramp, in everything. That can go in any deck that has that color. But sometimes you'll find a slightly less efficient removal spell, but in your deck it's actually a lot more valuable, and it provides some other benefit in the form of synergy. Yeah,
I completely agree. I think the thing that makes a lot of the staples so good and so played everywhere is that they're good in every circumstance, but they're not great in every circumstance, because by being so versatile, they naturally are just like, they're just like a good version of the effect. But as you say, when we start to look at the cards that are good in specifically in our deck, sometimes the upside of playing these cards
way better
than playing your Beast Within, playing your Heuristic Study kind of thing. Like in my Kaza Wizards deck,
yay!
Gets a mention every episode.
If you ever disassemble this deck, I will build it myself just so we can talk about it on this podcast in every episode.
It's a real classic. It's a real favorite of mine at the moment. I always have a good time when I pull it out. It's just so weird.
It's goofy and actually wins pretty consistently too.
It's a pretty strong deck. So basically the gist of the deck is that it plays a bunch of wizards, and then Kaza, Royal Chaser, I think is what she's called, basically taps to reduce the costs of the next instant or sorcery spell you cast. equal to the number of wizards you control. So if you got 10 wizards and you tap Kaza, the next instant or sorcery you cast costs 10 less.
So it usually wins with like a Jaya's Immolating Inferno, maybe a lot cheaper, right?
And like a lot of copy effects as well, because you cast a spell that's really big and copy it, makes it really crazy good. But one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to have a couple of ways of just tutoring to find like instants or sorcery. So one thing I put like almost straight in was Solve the Equation, the one from Strixhaven.
Tutor, right?
Yeah, 2 and a blue. You tutor an instant or sorcery, reveal it, put it into your hand.
Sick tutor. It goes in nearly any blue. Most blue decks will have good instant sorceries in them.
Yeah, totally. It's a very, very good. In Kaza, it does have some upside where you can make it cost a blue, where it becomes better than Mystical Tutor. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. It goes straight to your hand.
Yeah, really strong. But I instead have recently been trying Firemine's Insight.
I know this card because it's in my stupid Niv Mizzet deck.
Oh, is it tribal deck?
It's got Niv on the front, right?
It does. It's got his face, like pride and center.
It's a tutor, but it's incredibly expensive. I remember it's really inefficient.
It's 5 blue-red.
That's huge.
But it's an instant, right? And I think you tutor an instant with mana value 3, 2, and 1. You don't have to have targets for all of them, so you can fail to find, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, the upside is, in a Kaza deck, I tap Kaza, the next instant or sorcery costs 5 less. I pay blue-red, and at instant speed, I tutor 3 instants and sorceries to my hand. To give a rundown of what that might look like, I run...
Do you run Turn-Aside?
I don't run Turn-Aside, actually.
Dude, I've heard it's a great budget 1-mana counter spell.
Maybe I should. I forget what the 1-mana spell that I run is. I think it's an X spell. So this is the cool thing is in my deck.
X is 0.
X
That's
is
so
0
true.
when you're tutoring. So the one that I typically get is what's the one from a couple sets ago that's like X red. The next instant or sorcery is copied X times. It's like Storm King's Thunder.
Storm King's Thunder. Crackle
So-
with Power is also...
Crackle with Power I don't have in the deck, but that would also technically
a really
be
great get.
3 red pips. Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, you can kind of... It also incentivizes... So obviously the upside is great. You get 3 instants or sorcery for 2 mana. But also, it like promotes a way of building your deck where you're like, oh, I actually have to think about the mana values that I play in my deck now.
Super cool.
And it made me like look for spells that had X and then blue in the mana value because I was like, well, now these actually are things I can tutor, so I should have at least one of those. And yeah, you sort of gets the wheels turning.
Just by adding that one card and replacing like a very popular card and making a more interesting card, it's actually made the rest of your deck more interesting because you changed the 1-mana slot or the 2-mana slot.
Exactly right. It's sort
really
of
cool.
Provided an opportunity to rethink the way that the deck ran. Yeah.
So in Moxfield, did you have an absolute aneurysm when you went to set the mana cost
Oh,
on the card?
I typically do, yeah. For X cost spells, I normally like make the X cost. You can change it on Moxfield. Yes, I had to kind of undo some of my work to get an idea of what I was looking
I would
at.
have just set your brain on fire. I imagine.
It was a sad moment.
Yeah.
It was a sad moment.
Well, look, I have a couple of examples of like really generic cards that are just popular. If you're going for a go wide strategy and build them up, make them strong.
Yeah.
If you're in green, Gaia's Anthem.
Oh yeah, creatures you control get +1/+1.
Yeah, it's
enchantment for 3 mana.
It's pretty decent.
It's fine. Yeah.
In my Bears deck, my
Yeah.
Ayula Queen Among Bears deck, I tell you what's way better than that.
What?
Costs 1 more mana, so slightly inefficient, but it gives all creatures with no abilities +2/+2. Guess what bears don't have?
Oh, any abilities?
Exactly.
That's wild.
So for 1 extra mana,
Yeah.
basically, I'm getting 1 extra pump across my entire board.
well, that's on 1 card as well, though.
Exactly. So like I could play a Gaia's Anthem and then another buff effect.
Yeah.
Or I can play this 1 card that buffs my whole board. And look, 1 extra mana to get 1 more toughness might sound on the face like not that great, but I usually have like 5 bears out.
Oh yeah.
That's 5 extra power on my board.
I mean, I think like the reference point here for Anthem effects, like the closest thing I can think of that buffs by +2/+2 is Dictate of Heliod, which is admittedly has flash, which is an upside, but that costs 5. So like
There you go, yeah.
you are undercosted for what you're getting. Yeah, that's so good in like specifically that deck.
It's almost like, I think there is an actual slightly better one, but for artifact creatures, it's white. It's artifact creatures get +2/+2. Something steel?
Yeah.
I can't remember what the card is, but again, in that deck, that's way better, right?
Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah, no, 100%. Well, speaking of my Golem deck, which actually I did play that card in for a little while. I ended up taking it out for a particular reason, but yeah, in my Golem deck, I was looking at my removal, and I think at one point I was playing the card Krosan Grip.
Probably one of the best enchantment artifact removal cards in the entire format.
Yeah, I mean, look, you pay slightly more mana, but you get split second. So like
nothing interrupts it.
No, this is like the only way to stop someone from killing you with their Death Star. What's it called? Aetherflux Reservoir. Yeah. Yep, this is like the only way to stop that from happening, basically. So that's a great card. I was playing that in the Golem deck, and then so my Golem deck is trying to sacrifice artifacts. So I was like, I wonder if there's any artifacts that sacrifice to like destroy things, and I found Dispeller's Capsule. So this is a 1 mana artifact. You pay 2 and a white, tap it, sacrifice it, destroy target artifact or enchantment.
That's way better, but it sacrifices so it triggers your commander.
Yeah, exactly. It's also like, it is, because it's an artifact, I can recur it. Like if I have any ability to get artifacts back from my graveyard, which I have a lot.
Yeah.
That's something I can get back. I can do it again. Like, so, you know, again, I'm paying slightly more mana. It's slightly less efficient, but I'm getting this upside of synergy of pumping all my golems and triggering stuff. And...
We literally just came from the game store, and one of our friends, Stella, she played basically a very similar version of this effect, but it's Dispeller's Capture, but it's Executioner's Capsule,
yeah,
which is the one same cycle of stuff, but in her Ashnod deck, which doubles the abilities, way better,
way really better than playing, you know, Go for the Throat, yeah, exactly right.
Admittedly, she did also play Go for the Throat.
Also very good. Yes.
Yeah, also very good. Look, my brain is on bears because it's my most recent build. So
I want to hear all about the bears. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, it's a fun deck, but I was looking at board wipes, but I was looking at like board wipes that don't hit creatures because I don't have many enchantments. I know I just mentioned one of them, the petroglyphs, but
there's not many outside of that one.
There's not many. So I could, like, when I was building the deck, I like looked on Ayula's list on EDH Rec, and Back to Nature is a phenomenally efficient, cheap. It's 1 and a green for an instant speed, destroy all enchantments.
Wow.
Super efficient, right?
I've never seen this, which is so interesting because people play like mass artifact removal. And
like Vandal Blast is super staple.
Yeah, people play that all the time, but I've never seen this one. That's so interesting. I wonder if enchantments are just... Well, they're just not. They're not quite as busted as artifacts, are they?
I don't think so, but if you're up against the right people, destroying all enchantments, and some enchantments have Shroud or Hexproof, or, you know, some might have Ward 2, so just going wide is, in my opinion, better. If you don't...
Oh, yeah, if you're doing mass removal, then you don't have to worry about Hexproof or Shroud, because it doesn't trigger. Yeah.
Exactly right. So look, I was looking for a couple of board wipes that hit, like, artifacts and enchantments, because I'm just running a creature deck.
Yeah.
Back to Nature was great, and then Brothers War came out.
I think I know the one you're talking about.
I know you know it. It's Fade from History, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Fade from History. It is a 4-mana sorcery. So already compared to that, Back to Nature, it's actually terrible.
Yes, not so good.
It's terrible compared to a mass board wipe. But it says, for each player that controls an enchantment or artifact, they create a 2/2 bear and then pop them all, then destroy it all. So if I have, like, and I do have, like, I have a Moss Diamond in there just to, like, so again, adding this card made me include, like, 1 or 2 artifacts or 3 artifacts, just to make sure when I do get it, when I create my bear, I get an Ayula trigger. I put +1 counters or remove a creature.
It's also got very cute art, which is, like, important.
It's very important in a cute, cuddly bear deck. Are you kidding me?
Oh my god. When we were playing the other day, someone blew up your golden bears, and I was like, you are dead to me right now. Look at the art on golden bears and tell me if you would ever destroy a golden bears. I couldn't do it myself.
I think I got those, like, the blinders that horses wear, and I was just like, I'm going to aim for you for the rest of the game.
It's like a torpedo or something.
But look, okay, I've given a lot of examples from my bears list, but in my Hydra's list, which is Zaxara, which cares about X spells.
Sultai, X spells,
When you cast an X spell, you create a 0/0 Hydra and then put X +1 counters where X is that spell's cost.
It's crazy. If you haven't seen this commander before, like, being able to do your Pull from Tomorrow and make a 5/5, 10/10 Hydra in some instances, it's nuts. It gets out of hand really quickly.
It also taps for 2 mana, which does mean it goes infinite with, like, a Freed from the Real effect.
I think you've talked about how you took these out,
I
right?
did,
Yeah.
because it played the exact same. The second I got infinite mana, I'd play a Nemesis Wave or a Torment of Hailfire, something like that, and it just win the game. So,
Sure.
look, I could easily run. It's got blue. I'm a control player, so I like playing the control magic. I could just run Counterspell, or I could run Power Sync.
Oh.
Which is an X and a blue, and it counters target spell unless its controller pays X. But when I cast it, I get an XX.
Totally. I think, is this the one that has Delve as well?
No, Power Sync doesn't have Delve. There's another X spell that does have Delve. I can't remember. There's two. I can't remember if Power Sync is the one with Delve or it's the other one, but one of them has Delve.
Yeah, but
which
look,
is still great.
The main thing is counter. You know, imagine if you had a spell that was like pay 5 mana, counter target spell, make a 3/3 Hydra. Like, you would play that spell, right? That's crazy.
And then draw
good.
a card because you've got Garruk's Uprising in the field.
Like, exactly. You would play that card, and in the right circumstances, that's what the card does.
So much better.
Yeah, totally agree. I've got one more in this little fun synergy category. My weird Krak and a Chroma deck. This is my strange polymorph list. It basically tries to cast a polymorph, which is like a spell that exiles a creature, and then you reveal cards on top of your library till you reveal a different creature and put that onto the battlefield.
So it's like almost Secret Commander with cards like Zada and Mirrorwing Dragon.
Yeah, Zada Mirrorwing Dragon are like the kind of goal hits, but also it's got like Feather in it. It's kind of like Secret Commander Feather, because Feather would play Zada and Mirrorwing Dragon as well. So it's like basically a Feather deck, but it's kind of fun and goofy. And I like Polymorph. I just think it's a funny way to build a deck.
You're playing a polymorph deck without blue, which is the spell polymorph.
I know. I know, it's weird. But there was this card that I found when I was trying to find like weird ways to put things back in my library. Because I was kind of like, sometimes I actually want creatures to be in my library because I'd rather polymorph into them because it costs less mana sometimes, right? Yeah. And also it's just like a fun way to keep my spells and stuff. Anyway, I found this card, Fire Prophecy, from Ikoria. Do you know it?
I vaguely remember the art. Has it got like an eye on
it?
Yeah.
It's very eye-catching, ironically. It's 1 and a red for an instant. It deals 3 damage to any target. So it's
Lightning Bolt, but 1 extra.
So it's slightly overcosted. However, you can put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library, and if you do, draw a card.
Oh, shit. So with Feather, does it exile and then you still draw a card?
Well, this is the interesting thing. So Feather triggers, and so does Mirrorwing Dragon, when you target a creature you control. So the thing that it does is 2 cool things in my deck, in my opinion. The one that I originally thought was my plan for it was that I get to put like Mirrorwing Dragon back in my library so I can keep drawing gas if I need to, right? Like put it on the bottom of my library, Polymorph won't do it later, whatever. The main thing it does though is if my creatures have toughness greater than 3, because I've pumped them a bunch of times, and I cast Fire Prophecy on Mirrorwing Dragon, I copy it, and I deal 3 to every one of my creatures, cards. But I put all the cards from my hand on the bottom and draw that many.
That's sick. That's so cool.
It's so cool.
I'll tell you what, that also, if for a completely different reason, Fire Prophecy and a Grenzo Dungeon Warden deck.
Yeah.
Cares about bottom of the library.
Bottom of the library, yeah.
I want to see more lists of that guy.
Yeah, so weirder, slightly overcosted, but the upside, it's good.
It's gravy.
It's gravy. This is also, by the way, like finding these synergy pieces, because we're taking out some of the cards that are quite strong, like those staples that we were talking about. This is a great way to downgrade a deck. If you're finding you're playing a deck and it's kind of blowing people out of the water, like maybe your play group are just not quite on that level yet, this is a great way to still feel like you're getting the wheels turning on your deck building and still feel like you're kind of improving stuff, but still kind of overall bring the power level down ever so slightly. So a great way to just move it a smidge.
I think my justification on the fact that these cards down power a deck is because, on their own, they're overcosted or slightly less efficient in some way.
Yeah.
However, if you do have your deck online, no one's going to complain about the extra value you're getting. No one's going to be like, wow, your deck is way too powerful because it's doing all these things. It's just, I totally should have removed Ashnod when I saw that Dispeller's capture, or the Executioner's capsule, because now you've got a 2 mana kill 2 things.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's, if you don't have everything down, you can still do the things.
Yes.
It'll just be slightly less efficient.
Yeah, 100%. Well, the other thing that I think we get when we move outside the box is more fun.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just had fun talking about synergy. 'Cause
Yeah, I mean, these
is
go hand in
innately
hand,
more
right?
fun.
Yeah, synergy and fun, I think, go hand in hand. Like, a lot of the things that are synergistic are fun. But, like, yeah, this is something that's going to happen. And this is, like, you know, one of the words that the commanders used was interesting, right? They said we can find interesting cards. And I think interesting cards just are fun because they kind of take you by surprise. Like, you do something and you kind of go, whoa, that works like this? Like, I have, I recently built an Averna deck. This
replaced your Rada deck.
Yes, yeah. So this was the sort of grew out of that one. So it's a landfall deck, but it's a very weird commander. It's Teamer, so it's green, blue, red, and that's the mana value of the commander as well, the mana cost.
Is it just 3 green? Is it 3 mana?
Just green, blue, red, yeah.
That's a lot of value for 3 mana.
Well, except that there's so many hoops to jump through. So basically, when you cascade, when Averna is out, you can play a land from among the exiled cards. So it's a cascade deck, but also a landfall deck. Anyway, I was trying to find ways to cascade the same creatures multiple times, because if you look at every legal commander card that has cascade in Teamer colors, it's not that many, and a lot of them are bad. Like, really, really bad.
Hang on, there's that green one that cascade. That's pretty good.
That one's not so budget friendly. That's Apex Devastator.
How is that not budget friendly?
That's
at all?
like $20.
Really?
Yeah, the card's it's crazy. It casts 4 spells for free.
Yeah, I think I have one. I might be willing to trade you.
I've actually traded already for it. It was a budget upgrade. Like, I was like, oh, I can spare $20 for this card.
Congrats on your splash.
Thank you. But look, before I had that card, I was like, I need to be able to cast these spells again. So I was like, what can I do to get them back? And I was like, oh, well, a lot of these are creatures. So if I can return them to my hand, that's actually advantageous for me.
Yeah.
So I found a card called Sunken Hope. Have you heard of this card before?
Is it blue, I'm assuming? Because
it
it's
is
bouncing.
Blue.
So,
it is blue. So it's 3 blue for an enchantment.
3 blue.
At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player returns a creature they control to their hand.
Each player.
So look, it's like, it's stacks. I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's like, it is a little bit stacksy, but when your deck has all of the cards that you want to cast again, you're just like, every turn I'll cascade with my bloody pirate, the 6 mana Pauper Legal Pirate. Like,
what?
Crazy, right?
That's so cool. And look, in the situation where you don't want to bounce, you've got a lot of landfall synergy. So like, you're creating 4/4 Baloths with Rampaging Baloths.
Yeah.
So if you have a gas hand and you don't want it, you've got tokens to return. So
yeah, I could do that too.
Effectively, then you're kind of staxing out the rest of the table.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a little bit mean. I actually haven't resolved it in the deck yet, but I was kind of like, wow, I actually get to get my cards back, and it like affects my opponents too.
Yeah.
And like,
I've only played against this deck once, and I'm yet to see it. So
yeah,
I'm scared now.
it's kind of wild. It's kind of wild.
All right. Well, another example from my collection.
Yeah.
This is I want to think about the type of fun that I have in Commander.
Sure.
And one of my favorite, I've spoken about this multiple times on this podcast, but one of my favorite things to do in Commander is politic with people.
Yes, I'm familiar with this, having played with you a lot.
But the problem is, when I'm playing with you in a pod, the second I start talking to another player, you jump in and go, oh, don't listen to him. Don't listen.
I like to think that if James is the devil on your shoulder, I am the angel on your shoulder going, don't listen to James.
Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast. But look, I love politicking. So when I was building my Elf Ball deck, which is Abomination of Llanowar, I was like, firstly, it was a creature-based token strategy.
Not your typical cup of tea.
The only way you can politic usually is by like, I won't swing at you if you don't kill it, right? Like that's
whereas normally you're holding up counter spells and you're like, I won't counter this or I won't remove that, and that's like your way in. So instead it's different, right?
It's different, but I found a card that is pseudo protection. So I put it in my protection slot in Moxfield when I think about it.
Yep. Shout out to the last episode.
Yeah.
2 episodes ago.
All 3 of those.
Yes, all 3 of them.
But the card is called Dying Wish. Have you ever heard of this card?
No.
It's wild. It's a black aura.
Okay.
So it's 1 and a black, but it enchants a creature. And when that creature dies, you drain for X. So target player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the power of that creature.
Whoa.
So in my Abomination of Llanowar deck, I put this on the Abomination, and that Elf Ball is like a 10/10.
I think like the smallest I've seen that creature be is like an 8/8. Like it's always got so much power.
Because like it's a 3 mana commander, which is awesome. So I could cast it on turn 3, but it's a 1/1 or a 2/2.
Yeah.
Like,
It typically comes out late, and also the other thing is it counts the elves in your bin. So
It does. It's huge.
So much of the time, even if a board wipe has happened, it's still so big.
Even late game, it's still huge. And I have like cool tribal instant removal, like Eye Blight ending or whatever it's called.
Eye Blight Massacre, I think.
That's the board wipe one. Anyway, the Dying Wish, basically why it's pseudo protection, is if you're the reason my commander dies, I'm draining you. Don't touch it, and it won't hurt you.
Wow. So this is the kind of thing where someone's like, oh, I feel like we might need to board wipe, and you're like, hey, you can board wipe. You're going to lose 10 life. Wow.
Don't touch my elves, man. Don't
touch the elves.
And you know what? I actually love this effect so much. I ended up building a deck recently that has that effect kind of innately on it. Ukima and Kazar.
I just played against this deck literally like a couple of hours ago. Yeah.
So when Ukima leaves the battlefield, which is such a good wording on that card.
Doesn't have to die or put into exile or bounce. Just if it leaves anywhere, it will do it.
Yeah, and it drains. Yeah. So it is a really fun effect of like, if you're the reason it happens, it's going to you. Yeah. And I've had people in situations where they're on like less life than the power of Abomination, and I'm like, all right, deal with my opponents and I'll let you live another turn. Like,
wow, that's typical James behavior.
It is, 100%.
That's beautiful. In a similar sort of vein, actually, in terms of leaving the battlefield, I recently have been playing this card in my Azor the Lawbringer deck, which is, I know, a favorite of yours. It's my first ever commander deck that I built from scratch.
This deck was built out of a bunch of unsleeved cards with elastic bands around it in a old case of an iPad. Not even a case, an old box that the iPad came in.
That we had put like cut out pieces of ice cream container as like dividers were in the box with like tape over them.
I mean, I knew you were a budget boy, but that's thrifty as hell.
Oh man, what a day.
You've got a lot of Ultimate Guard archives now.
Yes. Yeah. I'm set. But I've been playing this card in that deck. So the kind of goal of the deck is it's like likes to draw cards, likes to gain life, and likes especially creatures that trigger and things that trigger when you do draw cards or gain life. The favorite sort of things to do is stuff like Chasm Skulker, stuff like
Ajani's Pridemate.
Well, there's not Ajani's Pridemate in the deck, but there's a aura that does the same thing, except it's a mana of life that you gain.
Whoa.
I forget what it's called. I think you've seen it. Anyway, it's like a 3-mana aura, and whenever you gain life, put that many +1 counters on the creature. It's crazy. Anyway, so the thing is, I end up with these big creatures a lot of the time. I found this card called Vanish into Memory. You might be familiar with it. It was a Thrifty Thursdays a little while back.
This is an Azorius card,
It is an Azorius card. So it's 2 blue-white for an instant that says exile target creature. You draw cards equal to its power. At the beginning of the next end step, return it to the battlefield and you discard cards equal to its toughness.
Oh my god, Chasm Skulker combos with this.
Yeah.
What?
Well, I mean, Chasm Skulker is interesting because it doesn't die. Because Chasm Skulker has to die, which is so annoying.
It is a death trigger.
But like literally anything that has +1 counters on it. This basically, the line of play is, let's say I've got this creature that's got 10 +1 counters on it. It's a 2/2, right? So it's 12 power right now. I cast Vanish into Memory on it. I draw 12 cards. It exiles the creature. When the creature returns in the end step, I discard cards equal to its toughness. It's a 2/2. It re-enters the battlefield.
So you discard 2?
I discard 2.
That's
for
nuts.
4 mana, instant speed, draw 12, discard 2. The other thing is, it doesn't have to be your creature. So if someone else... like temporary removal.
Yeah.
But if someone's got something with a million counters on it, and that's the problem, it's like, yeah, cool, I'd love to draw 40 cards and discard 2 in your end step. It's crazy.
This is also, again, like pseudo-protection. Like, someone goes to remove your thing. You're like, okay, I'll exile it, draw a shitload of cards, and then discard 1.
Well, a little bit of a thing I'll clue you into as well when finding these kind of weird cards is stuff that gives you options. We've talked about this a bit when we talk about removal, but like having multiple options when you do things is like, oh, it's so fun.
It's the gravy.
It's the... Stop it! It's not the gravy.
It's great.
Anyway,
well, look, I got a couple other examples. One of my favorite ones is a bit of a flavor win.
Yep.
So I have a Siona deck. It's a green-white deck that I barely ever play.
I've seen it about 3 times ever.
Yeah, it is a fun deck. I don't play it because it actually runs a couple of like instant win, infinite combo type things.
And you got a couple of tutors for it as well.
Yeah, I've also got like Teferi's Protection. It's pretty strong. Basically, the whole point of the deck is every time a creature is enchanted or equipped, it creates a 1/1 soldier. That's what
Yeah.
Siona's ability says.
Yeah.
So the main infinite win is using I forgot.
Shielded by Faith?
Shielded by Faith. Yeah, it's the Gideon version as well. I have in my deck. It's really
beautiful.
pretty.
Yeah.
So basically, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you can move Shielded by Faith to that creature. So then a new creature is enchanted, and it triggers.
Siona makes a new creature. You move Shielded by Faith onto that creature.
And it's a May trigger, so you make 100 and then stop. And it's insane. But I have a really cool piece of protection in there because I create so many tokens.
Yeah.
I have a card called Martyr's Cause in there. Have you heard of it?
Oh, I think I know this one. What does it do?
It was reprinted on the list, and the art is so goofy and a bit wacky. It's like an older card, but it basically says for 0 mana, you sacrifice a creature. So now it's been like Oracle text to sacrifice a creature.
Yeah.
And you prevent all damage that would be dealt by one source.
Oh, so this is an enchantment.
It's an enchantment. Permanent enchantment. I think it's 2 and a white. It's really cheap.
So it just like sits in the battlefield, and at any point you can...
I can prevent the damage from a single source by sacking 1 lonesome soldier.
Wow.
It's wild.
So someone's huge commander or someone's huge rampaging Baloth or something is coming at you, and you're just like, cool, sack a creature, doesn't do any damage.
They're firing off a Jai's Immolating Inferno at me to win the game. I can just be like, done.
Oh, single source.
It's incredible. So it's a single source, but... The reason why I thought this was an absolute flavor win is because in the flavor text of the card, it says something along the lines of, a soldier's only purpose is to die.
Oh my god!
Or to die to protect, or something like that.
Wow.
It's like, so I love the fact that the creatures I'm guaranteed going to be sacrificing are 1/1 soldiers.
Oh, that's horrible.
It's it's a good protection spell.
I mean, I kind of love it. I think I have one more. I have this card in my Queen Marchesa deck. This is the deck where the whole theme is my partner, so it's just like goths and like goth-looking things.
You also just got her custom tokens as well.
I did. My partner, actually, I asked her to draw me some 1/1 assassins with Death Touch and Haste.
Can you post them up in the Discord? So
yeah, I'll post them somewhere
yeah.
so people can see. They look really cool. I found a way to give them the official Magic frames, and then I got a professional proxy service to make them, so they look legit.
And your partner drew them, so in the art, like the credit of who's the artist is,
yeah,
it actually says your partner name.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
It's really cool. Anyway, in that deck... it's basically like an aristocrat sort of sacrificey kind of deck. I have a card called Requiem Angel. I think you've seen this a few times when I've played the deck.
Yeah.
It's an angel for 5 and a white. I think it's like a 5/5 flyer, so it's a great rate already. Whenever a non-spirit creature you control dies, create a 1/1 spirit token.
This is an aristocrat strategy, so
Yeah.
it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. And also, importantly, like most of these effects say non-token. This does not say that. So any token
all
creature
your
that dies,
assassins.
all my 1/1 assassins that die, make a spirit. All my like 1/1 servos that die, make a spirit. 1/1 bats, make a spirit. 2/2 zombies, make a spirit. Everything makes a spirit. It gets out of hand really quickly.
So if you've got a Blood Artist and Woe Strider,
yeah.
uh-oh.
It just wins games. It's
Yeah.
actually been crazy how many times I've been like, wow, I think I have enough like creatures here to kill the table. It might be kind of close though. And then I'm like, oh no, I've got Requiem Angel.
So I have 5 times the amount of creatures that I think I do.
It gets out of hand.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And I think the main thing I want to get us to take away from this section on like the fun cards is like the amount of satisfaction you feel when a card works is so much higher when you are a bit unsure about it when you put it in the deck, right?
I totally agree, yeah. Because I know, again, I keep referencing these two, but like I don't build white that often. So Swords to Plowshares and Path, I know are efficient and gonna work. But when I include a white removal spell that's a little bit more based on, draining someone or like paying life to do something, it's like, and it synergizes my deck. I'm like, this is nowhere near as efficient, but when it values off and gets me extra stuff, so good.
It's so nice. It's so nice. Well, look, popular cards can get repetitive over time when we keep on playing them. And like we said, accruing them can feel like you are working towards that singular goal of owning them all and having the perfect deck. But looking at other options feels fresh and interesting. That was the word that the commanders used to our tired magic brains. So for the maximum amount of fun, we're going to need to try a little harder and think outside the box.
Yeah.
So,
Space Commanders. Command received. Oh, you did a bit of a jaunty salute that time. You did a bit of a...
feeling sassy a bit. Oh.
That's a weird audio that people are now going to have to listen to.
Oh no, don't clip that. Don't clip it. Don't.
It's been clipped now.
Oh,
well
God.
done. You've screwed it.
That's the fate of all things.
Well, should we end all episodes as we do by tradition and planeswalk out of here?
Oh, we should ask the listeners. Oh my god, I completely forgot. Do you feel commanded? What do you think of popular cards? Have you got any other less popular cards to shout out? Join our Discord, chat to us. We want to hear from you. We want to answer your questions. Yes, planeswalk. Let's planeswalk.
Wow, that was an efficient ending. That was really efficient. But okay, with all the listeners and the end title,
Yes.
like, subscribe, hit the bell.
Yeah.
Let's get out of Magic.
Sure.
It's your turn. Where are we going?
Let's planeswalk into a province of Tamriel.
Oh, this is Skyrim.
Skyrim.
Nailed it.
He's in it.
I knew it.
in it.
I have played Skyrim once on my Xbox and then never played it again because it was just too much for my gamer brain.
I also played it once on my Xbox, except I then played it many more times on my Xbox as well. And then on my computer. So look, I basically I have a custom built PC and all that fancy stuff.
It's glowing red right now. It's cool.
It's lovely. And look, a big part of the reason that I made it kind of fancy and good and bought a nice monitor is I wanted to mod Skyrim. I wanted to download a bunch of mods.
Is that literally the whole reason you built this PC?
It was a good chunk of it. The only other game I played was Rocket League, which is so undemanding on your computer that you could run it on a crappy laptop.
You can run it on a Nintendo Switch, mate.
Yes, it's not a demanding game. I just wanted to make cool Skyrim modding lists, to put them together.
Okay, but you've been playing Skyrim for years. Why are we bringing this up?
Well, the thing that I have been now thinking about is I obviously do a lot of writing. I write for this podcast. I write skits. I write 50 Thursdays. And one thing that I've never really tried is writing for a game. And me and Electra have been playing a lot of these mods, my partner Electra, and we've sort of found that we like a lot of the characters and some mods are really well written. A lot of really popular mods are not that well written. The dialogue and the characters are kind of two-dimensional.
Is this because the people that are modding it are super good at coding and
Exactly.
computer aspects, but they're zero skills in English?
100%. And a lot of the time, the thing that they're excited about making is a new world. They'll build this amazing new house and new enemies and new armors and all of that looks amazing.
Yeah.
But they're not writers, so that's not their skill set. But so basically, me and my partner are hoping to start writing a Skyrim mod.
You're kidding?
No, we're gonna try and we're thinking we might start with a follower. So this is a mod where you just have a character who you can meet in a tavern somewhere and say hey, come with me, and then they talk to you, and when you go to particular places they say particular things and that kind of thing, but they're just someone you hang out with as you're playing the game.
That's so cool.
We thought we'd start there, but we kind of want to write a quest. That's the main thing we want to do together is write a story that's in Skyrim, that's in the game, with characters that we know from Dungeons and Dragons and stuff.
And I know your partner, Electra, is a huge writer herself.
Well, she writes almost exclusively fantasy, so
this is right up her alley.
Right up her alley. I'll be deferring to the master, which is Electra in this case.
Unless there is a weird little limerick to be written, then you can.
I
your time to
will.
shine.
Yep, I'll bust out the limerick template. I'll be good to go. Yeah,
That's really cool, dude. I will play Skyrim if I can play a quest that you have created.
Oh man, that's a great incentive. I actually want to write one now.
And okay, well, when you finish it, I'll play it with you and Electra, and I'll live review it for you both.
Beautiful. Oh, I can't wait.
I'm so excited for this.
Oh, lovely.
Skyrim was so hard for me, though. It's a big game.
It's a very big game. There's lots going on. There's lots to learn. Yeah, for sure.
All
right. Well, thanks for sticking with us, everyone. We'll catch you really soon.
Yeah, go find some more fun and interesting cards to play with.
Yeah. Tell us about them in the
All right.
Discord.
Bye, Command players!
See you soon.